Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started.
Hi.
Thank you. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, January 14th at 7:30 p.m. in the board meeting room. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the board members and the administration for dedicating their day to us. I am not going to say much because it is such a long day. I will hand it right over to Dr. Adley.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you here on a Saturday morning. I'm delighted to experience what this might unfold today. And if I may say, just on behalf of the board and administration, once again, I'll just offer congratulations since you're sitting at the table. We did offer congratulations in our absence at the last board meeting. Congratulations to Dr. Silver on a recent appointment to Ridgefield. Congratulations, Dr.
Before you get started, I just want to remind everyone, in this meeting we do suspend the regular public comment rules. After each RC, there will be an opportunity. We will call for public comment. There will be an opportunity for questions and comments to be received by the public.
So the budget, as you know, came in at 3.46. Just very quickly, it was a challenging budget for some particular drivers that we had, in particular, thank you. In particular, the health, the pension, excess costs. So those were big drivers in the budget this year. So with that, we've got 3.46. We'll look forward to hearing our presenters and our department chairs and representatives of the department to explain exactly what that entails. So with that, we'll have a lead off with our early learning program. Laura Strayton. Laura, good morning. Thank you for being the lead off hitter for us this morning.
Good morning. I'm very excited to kick off the budget season with our very young learners, building that foundation for elementary, middle, and high school and beyond. So thank you again. So on December 10th, the Board of Ed heard an overview of the early learning program. And just as a reminder, it is a special education program that students with learning differences and students with typically developing skills learn alongside of each other. Also, RC 26, you will notice that most of the budget is the same as last year, which includes teacher salaries, paraprofessionals, the curriculum and materials remain the same. I would like to highlight some of the requests and changes regarding the professional development. This school year, the preschool was awarded a grant through the Office of Early Childhood and in an area that we would like to further develop. So we used that money and was granted to find out more information on early detection of dyslexia, and also good practices for all children in developing that early literacy. So Margie Gillis from Literacy How, Dr. Margie Gillis has been working with us throughout the school year, and we'd like to continue this work with her. This is the foundational year, and then next year the proposal is to have Margie Gillis and her colleagues come in and do more of a modeling and coaching for our preschool teachers. So taking what we learn now and really implementing it and having that coaching ongoing. I've discussed with Dr. Gillis continuing with the same, pricing that we got through the grant for next school year. So that is the proposal for the increase. We also do have continued work through CES around some curriculum and observation teaching schedules. And I'd also like you to support the 3% increase in the tuition. When we looked at the cost of living and other surrounding or the surrounding preschools, they seem to be doing an increase of 2 to 4.5% increases. Any questions?
Does the board have any questions? Mr. Burke?
Just so I understand, with regard to the professional development, so of the increase, is that grant funded?
No, this year was I
This year.
had professional development money, but in addition, I had $6,000 through the state of Connecticut. So the I don't know, the hourly rate or her day rate is the same. You know, I think she was kind to the state of Connecticut. And so we are moving forward with a really good price for that professional development.
And then would the plan then be going forward, will we be looking at a $10,000 cost going forward from year to year, or is this more of just a one-year bump and then it'll go back down to the more historic levels of around 5,000?
I think we're in the early stages of our learning. I'm not sure if it will be $10,000. I mean, it's always nice to have that continued support. I'm not sure if we'll need it all, but you know, I'd like to continue. This was a foundational year. Next year, I think it's cementing what we've learned and crafting those strategies better.
Okay, thank you.
So is the intent here is to continue with the goal of increased skills around early detection?
Right, and yes, for all children, but really, you know, also working on that curriculum so that they're exposed to it, so we're not doing intervention so much. You know, it's everybody is getting it.
Other questions, board members? Mrs. Stein.
Good morning. On the tuition,
Yes.
our current run rate is 171. We're expected to hit that 322, Rich? Is that
Yeah,
on
we are.
track?
Yep.
Okay, and in looking at what we're budgeting for next year, it looks like that's about 48.5 students. Is
Correct.
that, how many typical students do we have this year?
I think it's around 34, because I think we're around 68, so I'd have to double check though.
Okay, so we're expecting an increase,
We're expecting to hit roughly the 90.
the
by the end of
90,
year.
and so that
Correct.
would make sense. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm.
Mrs. McCowan?
Do we have the tuition increase schedule?
So we can provide you a schedule, but the last 5 years, I can just provide the information. In fiscal 17, the tuition was $6,000. It was raised 3% the following year to $6,180. The following year is raised another 3% to $6,365. The current year, it was raised 4.5% to $6,651. And then in the budget before you, it's proposed to go up 3% to $6,851.
Mrs. McCowan?
What percentage of the tuition payment actually covers the full cost of a typical child attending? Is it fully covered?
So the overall budget this year is proposed at $1.6 million. So if you were to assume the 90 students were enrolled, it creates about a per pupil of a little over $18,000. Assuming the $6,851 is the tuition rate, it gets you to about 38%.
But the children who are typically developing aren't usually receiving the same level of service. So I would assume you prorate that a little bit.
Slightly. I mean, the information in RC 26 isn't disaggregated in between typical peers and non-typical. So the easiest way to do it is really that whole RC 26, or RC 26, but there are higher services for some students than others.
Okay.
And that would be typical as in our elementary schools, they're
Correct.
higher cost per pupil than some others. Any other comments or questions? Mrs. McCowan?
How do we handle it if families say that they can't afford the ELP payment?
So we've had for a few or several years, I'm not sure when it started, but if the family is eligible for free or reduced lunch, they are eligible for reduced payments or reduced tuition. Also, families this school year have asked to do monthly payments, and with central office's conversation, that's been granted.
Okay.
Laura, you made a comment at your presentation that you found that some parents left the program due to pricing. Do you have any numbers on that?
Yes, so I said 11 students left ELP prior to the start of school year. 6 moved out. 2 declined due to the having no pre-K 5-year-old option. Many of the community preschools have a preschool for 5-year-olds for children who are going on to or kindergarten age but choose to have another year. 2, couldn't afford the tuition, and one other family chose to go to a different school for a different reason.
Okay. And also, when we set tuition, we looked at area preschools and we're right in the median there. Although we provide longer hours than many of those preschools, correct?
Yes, with the exception, some of the community preschools that do have a pre-K 5-year-old program, those are the kids that are kindergarten age eligible. They have a 20-hour program or 30-hour program.
Yeah, but we don't offer pre-K.
No, we don't
so
offer
it's
that.
not
We offer
applicable.
kindergarten.
Okay. Mrs. McCammon?
Last year, did we also put a 3% processing fee on payment? So last year, what's the effective increase of the tuition?
So for the year that we're currently in, was the first year that 3% processing fee was added.
Mrs. McCammon?
Are there any plans to look at the ratio of typical to non-typical students, both educationally and financially? In terms of
So
optimizing
the state guideline for so I don't know if this will answer, but the state guideline is 50-50. And so, you know, when I collect children around now, I try to get more typically developing peers because in actuality, they may have some differences they need attention for. You know, I would say I keep it at a 50-50, but there are some classrooms that have more students that are typically developing than peer models. There is no plan right now to look at increasing, you know, like a 1/3 special needs to 2/3 typically developing on the books. But I do try to pre-stock peer models. You know, if we were saying a classroom of 12, perhaps, you know, 7 to 4, you know, whatever that is. If that's the right math.
Mrs. Ritchie?
I wanted to just get a little more information on the increase to the teacher aides that you're showing for next fiscal year. We actually just did a transfer to reduce that number. It seems that we're going back to the original budgeted number for this current fiscal year. So could you speak to those, and also maybe just touch on the special class teachers increase as well?
Sure. So the special ed para, we did make that transfer earlier in the year to cover the 5 additional paras within RC24 special education. It was primarily done through salary savings as those positions weren't filled. We're assuming those positions are going to be filled for the following school year, which is why you see the spike up. In part, it's because the budget variance is shown from revised budget as opposed to adopted budget, so you have that swing. In terms of the salary for the teachers, it's primarily just the step movement in the DEA contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. McCammon?
I also wanted to know, I just lost it. Sorry.
You want a minute?
Yes. Do we still have a waiting list for this program? I know our numbers are a little low this year, so I'm curious.
Right. I mean, this school year we don't have a waiting list. We do have children that are turning 3 later in the spring that are slated. I just received a student who moved in from New York that's joining our program. So we don't have a waiting list for this school year, but we do have children trickling in. And next school year, I'm about to do the lottery next week, so families will know. You know, there's certainly less students on our wait list than in years past. We did open up the 2 classrooms at Oxbridge a couple years ago, and that really kind of absorbed most of the students who applied. So for those families, they were able to get in. There was no wait list. They can make their decisions about what preschool they want. So,
I also think, I think we discussed last year, one of the factors in that wait list might be that the private area preschools change their tuition schedules. So often when you were paying most of your tuition in the spring, it was easier to pull your child if they got off the wait list. Now most preschools are requiring payment much earlier, so
right,
parents are far
they
less likely
pretty
to
much
switch.
in full. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Different business models.
Right.
Any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Straighton.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Laura.
Have a great day.
We will move on to the elementary school. I see all our elementary
I think,
principals. Good morning, everybody.
I think Luke, draw the lucky straw.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Luke, sit. I suspended the rules. Is there any public comment? And I know there's some because I see you all. None today on ELP? All right, there we go.
My only comment is make sure your
We need
mics
your
are
name.
on, please.
Yeah, we need your name when we come up.
It's Teresa Vogt, but just please make sure all your mics are on and you actually talk into them, because it's really hard to hear you all with the sound of that system back there.
Thank you.
As you remember, your books push your microphones back often, so.
Hi, Tricia Bresnahan, 11 Glenvale Avenue. I think I know the answer to this, but there's no OT-PT speech listed here, so I think last year the answer was that it was in RC 24. And so I'm just wondering why is that it's not part of the ELP budget?
Hi, Courtney Darby, 23 Old Parish Road. Again, similarly, mental health services for ELP students I know are not specified here, and just it would be interesting from a transparency standpoint just to have an understanding if those costs are increasing when we're talking about our earliest learners. Thanks.
Tricia, what is your address? Sorry.
It's Old Parish.
Do you have 23?
Any other public comment? All right, this time we really will move on to the elementary schools. Dr. Forshaw.
Morning, Luke.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday. On behalf of the 5 elementary schools, we appreciate your time, energy, and dedication to our budget requests. I'll be brisk in providing an overview of the narrative section on behalf of my 5 colleagues, or all 5 elementary schools. And then we'll have time where myself and my colleagues are available for questions if you have any about the overall elementary budgeting process or any specific RC within our domain. By way of history, our process is really formula and enrollment driven for developing operating costs. You'll see in the budget narrative on page 69 that we're continuing on with that effective model for budgeting for the elementary schools. We take a close look at the enrollment figures that are given to us in the fall. We verify the enrollment projections against our current set of information about what we know about kids coming into the district. And then based on those enrollment numbers, we've made requests for sections and made requests for operating costs that are formula driven. The high-level personnel items that just to draw to your attention this year from the elementary schools are that we're keeping our enrollment figures in mind as we and our class size guidelines in mind as we make requests for providing section support for each of our grades across the 5 elementary schools. Due to patterns of enrollment, we are able to make a recommendation to the board for a reduction of 0.8 full-time equivalency in our PE sections. This is something that we can absorb through scheduling and through just the way that we're looking at our enrollment patterns, and that we're trying to itemize the 1.0 increase in kindergarten enrollment for token 8 this year. The operating costs are formula driven, so if you flip to page 70, you'll see the dollar amount per grade level for textbooks and consumables. We are recommending to maintain that formula, which has been historically effective, and we verified this year looking at our actual requests coming in from our grade level leaders, working with our curriculum department, that these figures will cover our operating costs for the upcoming school year. The only shift we're recommending is a shift in the percentage of dollars on the textbook line, that we're increasing slightly the percentage of allocated dollars to science for next year to make sure that we have full support for new units of study, and that the consumable line is just in line with our projected enrollment going forward. So in a nutshell, that's effectively our request for the elementary schools, and then I'm here and my colleagues are here for any questions you might have.
Board questions? Mrs. Ritchie.
I jumped out. I mean, I think it's at every elementary school. It seems like police and fire is going up again. So could you speak to why that's going on? It seems to be consistent for all 5 schools.
Yeah, we only use police and fire for services that like our open house or some night events that we host. I'm not sure if that's a factor of the cost for police and fire going up, or we're not increasing the events that we're having coverage for necessarily.
So we also have in the teacher's contract 1 additional day for evening, which is still to be identified for site, but at those evening activities, for parent activities, typically we have additional coverage there, or typically we have coverage on site, so that's budgeted into the schedule.
Can you talk a little bit about the formulas? They've remained pretty consistent over the years. Are the principals comfortable with the formulas? Are the formulas meeting their needs? Do they need a relook?
Yeah, it's a good question, particularly when we had both the new director of finance and superintendent who pushed us to look at those numbers again this year. We took a look at the numbers by basically working backwards. We have a kind of modified zero-based budgeting that we operate on at the elementary level. We'll talk to our grade level leaders, look at the curriculum coming forward each year in terms of just raw numbers of how much does a math textbook cost, how much does a trade book cost, and we basically built up from the number of kids that we're projected to enroll next year, exactly what we anticipate for the cost for next year, and then look at the formula that's allocated, and just kind of match the dollar that's allocated by formula to our projected, or anticipated, I should say, actual costs, and the numbers netted out to serve our needs.
Okay, and sometimes there's comments that the formulas create surpluses at the elementary schools. Do you guys feel that you run a surplus at any point?
I think we're very effective at spending the funds that are provided to us to make sure kids have what they need.
Okay. Mr. Cini?
I vaguely remember when my kids were in elementary school that parents would be putting forth to supplies dollars forth, and I only see 1% increases or 0% increases. You guys sure you have budgeted enough for things like tissues, paper, pencils, crayons?
I hope we've gotten better. We don't request those items from families. We try to allocate everything that we're needing for students' education within the budget. A number of years back, we increased the periodical line, for example. There was a tradition here where we'd say, please give us $5 for your child's scholastic news. We no longer do that. We're able to absorb that cost through the budgeting process and the support of the board. So by and large, we don't make those requests, and we ask teachers to make sure they go through the operating budget for those requests.
And the year-over-year increase of 1 to 0%, you think you're going to be able to cover? Okay.
Yeah, it's been effective. And again, we look carefully at the curriculum dollars required to make sure programs are going forward into next year, and it seems to be supportive.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Duke?
So you're first up, Luke, so you get my favorite question. But I'm excited to see we haven't increased the substitute teacher budget at all. We've left it at close to $300,000 a year. It's tracking, Rich, at about $70,000 year to date. Is that tracking where it should be? And a little discussion around why you decided to leave the substitute teachers at 0. I would like to see a decrease.
Same.
I just bear in mind we have additional personal day in the contract this year, so just to...
Right.
So typically you would see more of an increase in substitutes as the year progresses. So looking at it as like just taking the dollar amount and dividing by 12 doesn't typically work because the school year starts at the end of August, beginning of September. So you usually see a lower dollar amount through the first 5 or 6 months of the fiscal year, and then it'll start to spike as the year progresses. We are trending relatively well for substitutes this year, but we did leave it flat for the most part across all the RCs.
Mrs. Ritchie?
I would just add to that, I've done a little bit of an analysis, and there seems to be a couple schools where the numbers are a little bit higher. So I'd love if we could, at some point, take a deeper dive into that, because it does seem that it's not consistent along the schools. Thank you.
And I do think we've, last budget season and in conversations with the union, asked them to discuss with their members our concerns around absences in certain zones of the year. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Dr. Forshaw.
Thank you again.
Any public comment? Mr. Davis?
Have to lower it after Luke. Jack Davis, 197 Hoyt Street. I'd like to see if we can get a little bit better explanation at Royal Homes, Hinley, and Tokenique. I understand that we're switching between sections. One grade is losing a section, the other one is gaining it. But when I look at the salaries, the salaries to increase on the grade is significantly higher than the one we're taking away. And so if we can have an explanation of why that's occurring in those 4 schools, it would be greatly appreciated. The other thing is, historically, in some analysis that F&B has done in what was budgeted versus what was spent, when we look at the 7 schools, especially in the operating area, there seemed to be more budgeted than what was spent. And while we understand there's a need for flexibility, it's an area that we'd like the board to explore a little bit more this year.
Hi, Sarah Madsen, 10 Musket Lane. I would just like the Board of Ed to look at class sizes again. I know at Tokenique right now we are running at the cusp of many of the classes. We're getting, this month alone, we are getting almost a dozen more students. And I just think that we're really coming above, above the optimal level for many of these classes. So I'd like to respectfully ask the Board of Ed to look at the class sizes. Thank you.
Does anyone want to give the board a quick update on a dozen students entering the school?
Say it again?
A dozen students entering the school?
I'm sorry, Tara.
Is there any information on a dozen students
At Tokenique?
entering Tokenique?
Since the course of the year, Mary, do you want to speak to that? We've had a number of students. I'm not sure that it's been a dozen.
4 come in 2 days ago, and then between now and before February break, there's 4 or 5 more.
Okay, so maybe in the future we can
Can
just
I ask,
talk
are
about
those new to town, or are they, okay, new to town?
All right. Any other any other public comment? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We'll move on to music. Mr. Sadlon, is Rick here?
Is Rick here? Don't say Rick.
Yeah, that we're an hour ahead. What is somebody else here?
Don't jinx us.
We got an hour ahead of ourselves?
You can see if somebody else is here. Somebody else in the audience.
Yeah, we are an hour ahead. Okay.
There's never an hour for elementary.
Okay.
Yeah. These are just, I think you can move to without amending the agenda.
Again, we'll move, the problem is going to be, my guess is Jacqueline's not here either, because we're.
Audience members want to.
Yeah, and if audience, if people don't want to follow the schedule.
Well, that's great that they want to follow, but they're not here.
Right.
Here's Rick. Oh, sorry. Rick, we're gonna let you take off your coat, but we're ahead of schedule. Yeah.
We may want.
Yeah. Jeff, do you want us to take a 5-minute break? Will that help you with, for later, if later gets long? If we
Just take your time,
a
yeah.
minute break,
Okay.
does that help you for later? Okay. He's ready. Well, let's let him catch his breath. Okay. Okay, Jeff needs certain breaks to break up the DVDs. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Rick, you are not late, okay? We're well ahead of schedule.
And we're never this early in the day.
Good thing I decided to come early.
Okay, all right. So feel free to take a minute.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm
Okay.
good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a little bit of a review of the status of our music department. You can see I put in our narratives here. I mentioned that during high school band at 127 that represents the highest enrollment in activity in the past 20 years. We also, which I didn't include in here, but our 6th grade strings at 78 students is also the highest ever that we've ever had in participation in 6th grade strings, and our grade 8 orchestra at 175 is also the highest we've ever had in that month. So we continue to, in quantity, break new records, and also I'm happy to say in quality as well, of the education of our students and opportunities for our kids in our music department. A couple of things that look a little bit different, perhaps. One of them Well, I'll go over a couple of the highlights here, and then I guess we can ask questions. But the 230.02 is just that's all of the music and all of the sheet music and band and orchestra arrangements for every student 3 through 12 in the entire district. And when you break it down by all the kids that are participating, all the students, it comes to about $9 per student. And we get a lot of bang for the buck for that because we do encourage our teachers to use the existing library that we have as well, with thousands of titles in it also, but this it gives them an opportunity to get the latest and newest music that's out there for our students as well. Resource materials. Some of you might remember the Smart Music, that we're using Smart Music as a music assessment program that we're using for all of our instrumental students in grades 6 through 12. I think it was last year.
Yes.
Was it last year?
Yes, yes,
'Cause
it was.
it came up. Last year, we were happy to...
Year before last.
And we were happy to offer it to all of those students because the Smart Music company reduced their price. They came up with a new app, and since all the kids had now Chromebooks, they could get the app, and they could, for $8 a student as opposed to $35 or $40 before, we could supply it for all the kids, and we thought that was a good idea. We are continuing to do that with all our band students. However, in discussing it with our string students, they're going to pilot and try using Google Classroom as opposed, because when you get the $8 version, it's the $8 version. It's not the full $45 version that they used to get. So some of the teachers are a little bit put off by that, and it's a reduced amount of service to the kids, that flexibility. So they're going to try using some Google Classroom techniques next year. Our band teachers decided they wanted to continue to use that. We'll see what happens. So that's why there was a reduction in that line item account. And then there are a few other things in there. Sight Reading Factory is an online program for our Darien High School choruses. Music Express is another one. And in this account, and also in 250.30, I'll just jump ahead a little bit. There's some increases in some of these accounts, but not so long ago, and I remember, but maybe some of the people in this room don't remember, we used to buy textbooks regularly every year for our K-5 students. Thousands and thousands of dollars of textbooks and supplies and all that stuff with the music in it and all that. We don't do that anymore. It's all online resources. So that's why over the years this has shifted to be more of a online resource. And that's been kind of a natural transition, I should say, to that. So you'll see that we don't order textbooks anymore, and everything is online resources now. Music teaching supplies, 240.05. It looks like a big increase of 70%. All of that's $1,500 about, and it's just most of that's classroom instruments for our K-5 general music students. They order Orff instruments, or these barred instruments that they play. They create music, they compose music. If you stop in any of our elementary school classrooms, you'll see all these instruments. They're played on every day, and they're using them more and more in our curriculum. And actually, it actually goes along with all those online resources as well. They're playing along with those and creating music with those instruments. The temporary, this is a little bit new, that the 250.13, I put an increase of $3,000 in that account. We have a curricular focus theme every year. We bring in guest artists. This year so far we brought in a jazz quartet to play for all of our high school students at the high school. Our high school band brought in a guest tenor saxophone and drum soloist to perform on their concert. We rely on currently student activity accounts for that, and the generosity of like our Music for Youth organization and a couple others, and it depends if we can offer these things for our students, if those groups have raised money for that. So this is just a little bit of seed money to get us started, so we can bring in we have a Young Composers Concert. We bring in a guest composer every year to work with our students and give our students feedback and all that. Well, if I have to rely on the rental of school instruments to be able to pay that guy, to come in to work with our students. So I thought, this is what it really cost us to offer those services and those opportunities for our kids. We have every year we've had for the last few years, we've had we call it a boot camp, where we had a cello boot camp. We had kids, from all over the place, for 3 through 12, and all the surrounding districts. We bring a boot camp. We did a clarinet boot camp. We do those kinds of things. I usually go to the Stanford Symphony. They offer us a grant of some sort. Then we supplement that with a little bit. Those are really great things to motivate our kids and good opportunities. But it'd be good to be able to have a little bit of money to contribute to that. So that's why that increase in that line item. Again, 250/30. I mentioned that the biggest expense in that is the Quaver, which is our pre-K-5 online program, and it goes right in with our curriculum. And when our teachers have, you don't think of it this way, but our general music teachers at the elementary school have every single student in the whole school. So they'll have 300 to 400 students that they have. And they come in, there's hardly any break between one class and the next. They keep coming all day. And they have to reset the room. They're going from a 5th grade class to a kindergarten to a 1st grade. And they have different goals and objectives for each class. So the Quaver allows them, with a couple of clicks, to go from their 5th grade curriculum to their 2nd grade curriculum, and it's all right there. And it's very fun stuff for the kids and very interactive as well. Let's see, other things that might be some highlights. We just put on 73011 as replacement equipment. Those things are just things that are breaking that we need to replace. I put a couple of ukuleles in there because we always have a few victims each year, but some of them are just get older, get broken or damaged for some reason, and there are a couple of other Orff instruments also that are getting a little bit older. And the new equipment we put in there is 2 things that are on the majority of this. There's an amplifier for our middle school orchestras and 8 kg condenser microphones for our high school ensembles. Both of those teachers are currently bringing in their own equipment for that. And I didn't even know that necessarily. I said, these microphones are really good, how come? They said, those are my microphones. I'm bringing them from home, and I didn't know that. So he shouldn't have to bring them. They're very expensive microphones, and they're very good, but we should have those. We shouldn't expect him to bring his own in for that. I think those are the highlights. Are there any questions?
Board questions, Mrs. Stein.
Good morning. Can you just talk briefly about the reduction in .5 of secretarial services and how, just explain how that came about? And
You
how
probably guessed this wasn't my idea.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate that.
Sorry. But can you just speak to?
Yeah, I've been doing this job for about 20 years, and I think it's been that position. There's some sort of support for this K-12 program that's been going on probably 50, 60 years or more, as long as I can remember. And there's a reason for it, because it's very difficult to imagine doing our day-to-day business with all the support, with all the programs, with all the kids, without having a physical presence there somehow. I think there might be a way of, if it's just purchase orders or something like that, we could probably do that. But there's a day-to-day, all the instruments, all the inventory, all the music that comes in, all the services to all those kids. So it's difficult to imagine that. Having said that, as always, we do our best with the resources we have. That's all I can say about that.
Thank you.
I'm happy to address that.
Yeah,
in fairness, I don't think any of the RCs who come up are going to particularly like those reductions, and we have some forced choices to make. Some of the accommodations we made through, we've had an opportunity to transition to department heads across the district. That provides a little bit of opportunity for some of the tasks that ordinarily may have been secretarial in nature, from teacher evaluation and other things. I'm not saying that's a simple thing. We've actually reduced 2 secretaries. They're sort of for half-time positions, so to speak. And there's another secretary of the same sort of disposition there at the high school. 2 out of the 3, unfortunately, are part of the reduction. The third one will continue to service in different capacities within the school, as will some of the other secretaries that are in the school, as will we here, particularly for the health part of the secretarial reduction. So I know it's not ideal. It contributes to $100,000 in reduction. When I look at the central services reduction too in secretaries, that's $170,000 in reduction. It's not perfect. I certainly don't want to let staff go, but we had some forced choices we had to make.
Okay, Mr. Sini.
In these reductions, Dr. Adley, could you provide the extra job descriptions for us, just so we understand the roles, if they exist?
Yeah, we can provide what we have. Yeah.
Any other board questions? Ms. Ritchie.
Just on clubs and councils, I was looking at the increase there, and I did a little comparison to other departments, and their increases don't seem to be quite as high. I think yours is 36%. So if you could speak to that increase, and I know part of it's the contractual impact,
Yeah.
but I'd like to know a little bit more, just because it's not consistent with the increased clubs and councils in other areas.
You know, I haven't seen the new contract and really analyzed what that bump looks like necessarily. So, but almost every music teacher does get some sort of stipend for, it's called music concerts, and it's for all their before school rehearsals. They have to either rehearse with the elementary students or even middle school before or after school. They have their ensemble rehearsals. So that's all the band, orchestra, and choruses. So that includes that. So every teacher, there are 20 teachers, or 20, all get one of those stipends. Some get them for each elementary school if they're required to go to more than one elementary school. There are also, I have a whole list of all the stipends, but there are several stipends because a lot of those activities happen after school or before school, like jazz ensemble, like the pep band, marching bands, like the we have 5-6 jazz lab. We have honors groups for the elementary, honors band, orchestra, chorus for our elementary students in the spring. I mean, there are probably more. Just to sum it up, there are probably more stipends in that music than most other departments might have, just because a lot of stuff happens after school or before school.
So the primary reason for the increase, it's the same number of stipends as the current year. So the DEA contract did call for a 2% GWI plus step, but part of that GWI was to reallocate classifications of stipends. All the stipends that were reallocated within classifications happen to be music stipends. So what you're seeing is the bulk of the increase hit RC 13 for music because the reclass happened to be music stipends.
Thank you.
Mr. Sadlon, every year you come back, and I am happy to hear that we have the largest group of something. Do you have enough staff to cover these large groups?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. You know, when you look at a music program, we can have a chorus. You can have a chorus class of 50 kids, and they like it. You can't do that with other classes. You'd have to have 2 or 3 teachers to teach those 50 kids during that one class. So we like large groups. We like large ensembles. You can have 50, 60 kids in a band, and we'll take 70. You know, I mean, so the nature of that, I think, is just fine. Yes, we do have enough staff. We're doing just fine.
Okay. Any other questions on music? Ms. Maroney.
I'll take up something a former colleague has talked about for many years, is uniforms or required dressers or tuxedos. And so what is the expenditure for parents for those expenditures? And what is required?
Mostly it's at the high school, because usually the other students, middle school, elementary, they just have them wear a white shirt and black pants or something like that, and we're kind of lenient with that as well. But high school, they do wear, they have a tux pants and a tux jacket and tux shirt. I have all that written down someplace because we did look at that a little carefully. I think it's about I'm just going to throw out $100 for them to purchase those. The orchestra was renting them for a while, you know, for the year or something, and then they decided it was just, since the students usually in there for 4 years. But then between a freshman and a senior, they tend to grow, and so they might need another one. But I think I'll throw out that I can look more carefully at what that is. I didn't look at it recently, but I want to say it's about $100.
Thank you.
To follow up? All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for coming in early and ready to go.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
Is there any public comment on music? Mrs. Satori.
Hi, I'm Clara Sartori. I live at 161 Old Kings Highway South. I just had one question on Mr. Sadlon's explanation for account 25013. He referred to it as seed money, and I wondered, does that mean that he mentioned he was applying for grants? Is this money replacing the grants, or is he still going to apply for grants? Okay, so that's the question.
We would continue, for instance, our music for youth organization.
You don't answer questions? Yeah, so Rick, what we'll do is we'll receive all the comments and we'll come back to everyone with it. Yeah. Thanks. All right, we're still early. Is Jacqueline here? Yeah. All right. So we have Art, RC 14, and Jacqueline Samus is here.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ours is pretty straightforward. We are looking for kind of exactly what we had last year. We find that we do have the ability to purchase all of the supplies that we need for our students. Our facilities, our kilns are still working really well. We need to rewire one of our front loaders at the high school. We tend to do one every year to keep them running at their correct temperatures. But other than that, ours is pretty straightforward.
Please, someone have a question for Art. I'm fine.
I like straightforward.
I shouldn't joke. Does anyone have a question for Mrs. Stamets? Thank you.
Jacqueline, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Sorry. Is there any public comment on the art department budget? Thank you, everyone. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call for a 5-minute break now. It helps our taping if we break it up, and since we're ahead of schedule, anyone who wants to come in and be on time, let's just take a 5-10 minute break now, and it will help us when we get longer later and we don't have to take a break mid-section. So a 10-minute recess, and we will be back.